Continuing Unit 3 with essential questions 3 through 5, and the topic is industry. First essential question is, where are the world industrial regions? Second essential question, what factors influence the location of industry? And then third essential question, how are industrial locations changing? What is an industry? Industry is manufacturing of manufactured goods that come from manufacturing factories. It's adding value to a product is another way of looking at industry. Just think, it means also persistence of diligence in creating value. Industries spread from MDCs to LDCs, meaning that industry started in MDCs and more recently in the late 20th century, then late 1950s and on, we begin to see the shift to LDCs that have industries. U.S. has lost 33% of the manufacturing between 2000 and 2010, although recently there's been an uptick in industrial manufacturing because that's been an emphasis of this administration. However, the loss of these industrial jobs has led to the Rust Belt in northeastern region of the United States, known as deindustrialization. Industries left for several reasons. One, for cheap labor in less developed countries like China, being the largest manufacturer in the world, and then also industry going to the south because of low wage workers in the south and also right to work laws in the south. We can look at manufacturing employment, and we can also understand in the future that in order for a low price of a manufactured commodity, production will have to be done where there's cheap labor. And when a country develops, we've understood that as a country develops, they move in economic sectors to more tertiary jobs, which are service jobs that require a higher education. Whereas manufacturing usually is a VOTEC training, or at the very minimal, elite, a very small training for that industrial production. We can see the loss of manufacturing jobs. There's the Rust Belt I had spoke of. So the Rust Belt, again, used to be known as the Iron Belt, leading industrial centers in the United States until about the 1950s, and then we see a sharp decline in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. This has led to abandonments of neighborhoods. One of the most notable is in the city of Detroit, Michigan. Industrial regions. Europe was the first to industrialize. They produced steel and textiles. North America industrialized about 100 years later in the Northeast region. We've had markets in the Mid-Atlantic because that's where our industrial ship ports were located. Also, the national road and also the railways went into Mid-Atlantic ports like Baltimore. Rust Belt had transportation. When you take U.S. history, you'll understand that most of the railroad routes were in the north. Thus, when the country industrializes, we have access to transportation because of the extensive railways in the north. Now we see a shift in industrial to California, more specifically cheap labor for textiles, not industrial steel or manufactured output, but textiles, clothing, belts, carpets, etc. Here are the industrial regions. We can see the nodes of industrial production within European regions. And also there's been a shift of industrial regions from Western Europe to Eastern Europe because of site factors, cheaper labor. And they also have more high-skilled labor in Eastern Europe than other parts of less developed regions. Here are the industrial centers of the U.S. Industrial regions. Eastern Asia has the largest cheap labor force. Japan moved to high-skilled manufacturing in post-World War II with electronics, which requires high-skilled labor, high-skilled secondary labor, which is very different than just secondary labor. All right, and China, the largest pool, which produces textiles, steel, and consumer goods. How does situation influence? Situation factors that involve transportation. Remember situation from Unit 1, that's when we're taking a look at places or objects in relative location to other places or objects. When we look at Alfred Weber's theory, he's looking at two things. Weber's theory is looking at two inputs in a manufacturing center, then a market. He looks at where the inputs are, such as raw materials, water, or steel. And then you have to transport it to the market. And usually between the raw materials, there will be a manufacturing center. And then there will be the final destination, which is a market where you sell the industrial production. Weber's theory, you have the industrial manufacturing center close to the raw materials and closest to the heaviest raw material. And when it's closest to the raw materials, they're called bulk reducing industries because the raw materials are heavy to transport and expensive. And so the weight is reduced and then it's at a lighter weight at the market. Example would be copper and steel production. And then we have bulk reducing, where you have manufacturing plants close to markets where they, this bulk reducing, again, sorry, examples of bulk reducing. All right, and then now we see steel mills. Steel mills is where we see fabricated metal produced, and fabricated metals produced all over the United States because of the abundance of scrap metal. All right, when we get to bulk gaining industries, now that's what I was talking about earlier. That's when you have manufacturing centers near the market where they gain weight, like cars would be a bulk gaining industry, or like Coca-Cola or other beverage products would be a bulk gaining, or like potato chips, bulk gaining industries. Most manufacturing today is bulk gaining industries. Other site factors, we look at land, labor, and capital. Land, unique land. So when we talk about unique land, we're looking at site factors. Labor is going to be where cheap labor is, and capital is going to be where you have advanced tools or technology. When we talk about location, most important factor is the global economy or the global scale. Half of industrial workers are in India and China. There's a variation in wage. They're known as extensive wage earners, meaning extensive and intensive wage earners, meaning the production cost, most of it comes from labor costs and not of materials or capital. And the average labor cost in the U.S. is 11%. So we can see that our labor is not as intensive in the United States because we have advanced technology. Average MDC wage is $20, where LDC is $5. So anytime you have low-skilled manufacturing like textiles or steel, oftentimes it'll be in less developed regions because of those manufacturing jobs require intensive labor, and you want cheap labor for doing those intensive labor jobs. We can see the example of a hoodie. When we look at land influences, we look at city centers, the largest markets. We look at suitable land for resources. We look at suitable land near railroads. Modern factories today are in the suburbs or industrial parks. They're one-story buildings. They're out in the suburbs because cheaper land, cheaper than the central business district or the inner cities. and they're always near major highway junctions, interstates. Here's an example of a manufacturing building in St. Paul in 1922. And then we see modern factories near major interstates, one-story building. And this is, I believe, is a car manufacturer in Tennessee. Capital is the wealth from currency. Capital can increase technology and research and development and advancement of infrastructure. Capital can also increase financing and loans. And there's incentives for increased capital where there's lower taxes. Why are industries changing? They're moving from the Northeast, right to work laws, because of non-union workers. They have lower wages without pensions. And then we see it shifting from Northwest or Western Europe to the East and South. And then EU is shifting it because they're promoting economic development for all the countries in the European Union. And then again, it's moving south and east because of cheaper labor. But as I already mentioned, they're more skilled than other parts of the world like East Asia or Southeast Asia. We can look at the annual wage in 2017 of manufacturing production. Right to work states. And again, right to work laws diminish the pensions and collective bargaining of workers and unions. And it's created a hot topic in the United States. Unions trying to protect worker rights, wages, and pensions and collective bargaining, and then other states that want to eliminate so they can drive down the cost of wages. Which regions have seen industrial growth? MDCs declined by 50% in the 70s. Three main regions: East Asia, cheap labor, site factor, and also they have special economic zones where there's incentives that attract industry and heavy tax breaks. In South Asia, and largest producers of textiles and other consumer manufactured goods. And then Latin America, and they have maquiladoras, which are factories near the border of the U.S. and near major U.S. emerging markets. You can see Sony in Mexico. We can see special economic zones in southeastern China with the countries that have SEC, or the cities that have SEC, SEZ next to them. There's a new international division of labor. It's the low-skilled, cheap labor, which is outsourcing most of the manufacturing to countries that have low-skilled, cheap labor. High-skilled factories stay in the more developed countries. So high-skilled manufacturing jobs like in artificial intelligence or robotics. And then MDCs will be access to markets, but also access to talented, skilled workforce. And then also they can have just-in-time delivery, which is a warehouse that's constant turnover of manufactured goods, where they eliminate any inventory or heating or air conditioning costs of a building.